Hey ratbags, it's Jade, welcome to an ARK guide. Today taking a look at everything you need to know about creating your single player world. I've done this guide a whole bunch of times over the years. I've been covering ARK over 6 years, majority of them videos, guides and news. So there's no one better to take you through. Now you can get ARK for free on PlayStation Plus this month. I contemplated just uploading one of my old videos, but there are a few little changes. So if you're brand new to ARK, you're going to be trying it out for the first time, make sure you go and check out the rest of my content. Even the old stuff is still massively relevant, but I will be coming fresh with brand new guides on everything you need to know about ARK Survival Evolved in 2022. So leave a like, let's go. Okay, so when you start, you host your local server. This is where you can invite some of your friends to come and join. To do that, you click on the host non-dedicated option down here and that will start that session. There will be a bubble or a tether. Your friends will not be able to go too far without you being close by. Last thing to show you is if you are hosting a non-dedicated session, what you can do is you can set it to private match. So only people with the password will be able to join. Password normally has to be at least like 5 letters long. And you can choose whatever name you want it to be. This will show up in the actual menus when you're scrolling and looking for a server to join. So if you're having your world open to randoms, this is what they'll see. Obviously, if you want friends joining, then you tell them the password, simple. If you want randoms joining, then make sure you don't tick the private match box. Press accept and that'll load up the world. And it'll be the same as creating a single player world, just you won't have to worry about a password. If you wanted to play just on your own, then obviously you just click single player. In the past, you were able to run second Xboxes or PlayStations as dedicated servers, and you can still do that on some maps. However, the latest DLCs, because they were so big, basically they didn't work, and so Wildcard have discontinued that use. Then you've got procedurally generated ARKs, an idea that ARK and Wildcard tried about 4 years ago and never really took it anywhere. These will take maybe up to 45 minutes to load if you mess around with some of these, and it's effectively meant to create procedurally generated ARKs, but they're really not worth your time. Not unless you go and watch a whole bunch of videos explaining every single setting and detail. So what you really want is single player. Then you simply just got to choose what map. There are 5 paid DLC maps: Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Scorched Earth, Aberration and Extinction. You will have to buy the season passes or buy these individually to get access to these. Genesis 1 and 2 comes in a single season pass, you can't buy it separately. Scorched Earth, Aberration and Extinction, they come as part of a season pass, but you can buy these all free individually. They're regularly on sale, please don't spend full price money. Get too used to the game and go and try a lot of the free maps. I'm going to show you guys how you can actually spawn in a bunch of the DLC creatures for free and mess around with them too. But each map does give you some new creatures, new biomes, new ways to play the game. And then we've got the custom ARKs. These are the modded maps that got turned into official and basically pushed out for console players as well. Lost Island is most recent, and we've got one more coming this June, Fjordor. Then you've got the Centre, Ragnarok, Valguero and Crystal Isles. And again, I've got loads of guys taking a look at some of these. The island is the first map though that the game came out with, and it's considered the first one you should start on in terms of canon. So if you're keen to explore the story aspects and you think you really will get into the game, then it's probably worth starting on this island. However, there is nothing wrong really in starting on any of these other maps. The major differences are that some of the boss fights will be a bit more unique. In fact, you won't have the same amount of bosses on some of these maps. Some of them combine bosses together and others add completely brand new ones. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to go with the vanilla option. Last 2 boxes are deleting all your dedicated server data and deleting all your single player data. Basically, if you want to start a fresh brand new world, you can't load multiple options. So you can't have 20 different saves of the island or 20 different saves of the Centre or Ragnarok. You have that one save. You can save data onto a USB stick and then possibly upload it. But if you want to start fresh, be warned, if you click this, you'll delete all your progress, any bases, anything you've done on any of these maps. You'll notice some of them have got a little picture of a file icon. That means I've got to save data on that map. Oh yeah, if you do make any mistakes and you're worried you've messed something up massively, you can actually reset all the settings just by ticking that little button. So kicking off with general, and I'm going to pretty much do this in one breath, so buckle up. The difficulty level, this pretty much means the creatures that will spawn will be harder. You should get the max dino level of 150. If you put it to 2, then you will end up getting like 160, and then it scales a bit odd and a bit differently. If you start putting it up to like 3 and 4, you might get anywhere of dinos up from 200 to level 300 or even beyond. Be warned, the higher the level they are, the more stats they'll have, so they'll do more damage and they'll have more health. Or kill. It's usually best advised to keep it at 1.0. There is a special setting that we'll come to that will explain a little bit about single player, but generally if you want the full ARK experience, I would put that at 1.0, and there's lots of other settings here we can change. Dino damage. How much damage these dinosaurs will do to you. If you put it up, they're going to do more damage. If you put it down, they'll do no damage at all. A lot of these settings, if they're 0.0, it basically either makes you immune or it reduces a lot of the damage. For starters, I would have that like that. Player damage, same thing again. Have it to the right, you're going to do more damage with every hit. Have it all the way to the left and you won't do any damage. Structure damage is pretty much your traps, your spike walls. If you have everything over to the right, it's going to do a lot more damage. If you have everything over to the left, it will do no damage. And then player resistance. You can see there's tooltips here, but some of these do require just a little bit more explanation. But yeah, if you want to be invincible, just have some fun with obviously ARK. You can use cheats, or you can put that to 0 and you'll be God mode. Nothing will pretty much be able to kill you. Although I do believe you might still be able to drown. Same thing goes for dinosaurs. Don't put this at 0.0. It will mean that every dinosaur will not be able to take any damage. Unless you're weird and going to play some mad hardcore version of the game. Structure resistance pretty much is exactly the same thing. By reducing it, you make it that it doesn't take any damage to any dinosaurs. It's a bit more rarer than you would think. Actually, creatures come to attack your base. There's no actual gameplay loop where they'll do that on a regular basis. You just might get a giga that suddenly appears or chases you back into your base and start munching. So if you don't want it to destroy your base, make sure you put that to 0. XP multiplier. You can mess up ARK a lot in terms of balance. There's a whole bunch of XP multipliers that we'll come to a bit later. And they can really ruin the experience if you go too mad and too high. The ARK official experience does boost these from time to time with special events, and even at weekends sometimes they have events. I probably would never put it up above 3.0, not until you get used to the game a bit more. Taming in ARK takes forever. You might know by now that some creatures can take up to 12 hours and maybe more to tame. You can speed that up by putting up a high number. If you want them to pretty much tame most dinosaurs within a minute, or possibly even like 10 seconds, then go ahead and put the taming speed up to 30. If you put it to 0.0, they will not tame. And you can adjust each individual box just by left clicking onto it and then typing in what number you want. You can repair your bases, but sometimes there's a cooldown, so you can reduce that cooldown if you want, meaning you can repair your base whenever you want, as quickly as you want. When you set up your turrets, these will actually do a lot more damage if you increase the number to the right. If you want to get more harvestable items, i.e. more resources, then clicking this to the right means your dinosaur will gather more. On top of that, you've got the harvest amount. This is everything that can be gathered, chopping down trees, picking berries, etc. So again, if you put that all the way to the right, you'll gather more resources. Be careful if you use a large number on this, because you'll become over encumbered very quickly. Although you can increase how much you can carry a bit later on. Water and food, of course, is here. If you don't want to bother about that, you want to play ARK more as like an RPG or open world game, then you can actually just turn it off. Putting both of them to the left hand side means that you won't need to drink or eat. It's usually best advised to keep this at 1.0 or just underneath. Dinosaurs, majority of them tame by eating food. The more hungry they get, the more likelihood is they're going to eat the food that you give them quicker, and then they tame quicker. You can actually increase this as well. But be warned, this does I think affect well dinos, if my memory serves me right. You won't be able to tame any creatures. So don't mess around with that again too much. I would still keep it about there. It's not that hard to keep your dinosaurs fed. There's other ways to speed up the taming, which I'll show you a bit later on, and you can also have troughs that you can leave for your dinosaurs to eat from, so it's not that hard to keep them fed. Then after that, we've got player character stamina drain. This one is about causing players to get tired faster, and so if you reduce it down to 0, then they won't actually lose their stamina. Same thing goes for the dino character stamina drain, and if you want your player and dinosaur health to get more quicker once they've taken damage, then you need to put that to the right hand side. Now I've already explained the dino harvesting damage multiplier, but there is a player harvesting damage multiplier, and it's pretty much the same thing. If you put it to the right, you'll gather resources super quick. And then you've got the dino count. Please don't mess around with this, especially if you're playing on an OG PlayStation. You do not need to increase the amount of dinosaurs on your world. Frequently, as the game's gone on, more dinosaurs have taken a bit longer to sometimes spawn, so you generally need to play the game for a few hours sometimes to get every variety, and even if you go and explore some new areas, it may take some time from spawn in. If you're having trouble finding a specific dinosaur, even though you've looked at a wiki, make sure you go and kill a bunch of the creatures that are already there, and this always spawns out the chance of more spawning. After that, we've got some options to do with chatting in the server. This is more to do if you're running a non-dedicated session with your friends. You can have it public, you can put a password on it as well to stop trolls. You can turn on and off third person camera, so you can make it just first person. You can have global voice chat off or on, so everyone can hear everyone no matter where you are on the map. Likewise, proximity text chat can be there. Ticking that means that only players near you will be able to see what you're typing. Then you've got player left, player joined notifications, admin login, that will tell you if anyone's cheating. You can turn off the crosshairs, you can turn off the HUD, and you can disable loot crates. Again, a lot of these options were more geared towards playing on a dedicated server, so you might not want players being able to get a big loot. You can even turn hardcore mode on. Everything you do will absolutely reset if you tick this and you happen to die. PvE mode. This disables PvP and enables PvE. So if you don't want people trolling you and joining your server if you've got it open, or just to make sure that you don't hit your friends by accident, make sure you tick this. You can also disable friendly fire, and you can also tick to show the player location on the map. This is definitely something I would have. The game is hard enough without knowing where you are, especially for a noob. Then after that, you've got something called tributes. Tributes are downloads basically where you can get certain items, and this is what you need to summon bosses. So you might not want players joining your world and being able to summon a boss. Technically you don't summon the boss, you teleport to the boss arenas, but if you don't want that to happen at all, or no one to be able to download stuff like that, then you can click that and it will stop downloading them items. In fact, it's not just the boss trophy items, it's everything. Players, characters from other servers, and dinosaurs. You can control exactly what people can bring in. So your friend is playing on his world, he's got some dinosaurs, he wants to come with you to go and do a boss fight, then you need to make sure that that isn't ticked so he can bring his dinosaurs over to you. If you don't want people to spawn in 2,000 creatures just for a troll, randoms maybe from a public session that you've got going on, then you would have that ticked. If you don't want people bringing their characters over to your world and they've got to create a brand new fresh one every time they join, then again make sure you tick the survivors download. Last estimate, there's around 3 million players on PlayStation playing ARK already, so you can imagine there's still a fair few trolls. Then you've got PvP Gamma, you can turn it on or off, and again it's just an option if you run a PvP server. Use single player settings. This is meant to give you a bit of a little boost when you're playing on your own, and effectively just gives you a little bit more experience, a little bit more gathering rates, and makes the game just a little bit more balanced. So I'll definitely leave it ticked, although I'd still adjust a bunch of the other settings. Corpse Locator, find your body wherever you die. A big green arc will be in the sky, and that's what you need to look for. Disable Structure Placement Collision. Basically, if you want to build almost anywhere in the game, then make sure you have that. This means that you can build into the landscape more sometimes. Allow multiple platform floors. Basically your saddles for some of your dinosaurs are so big you can build bases. So you can actually have multiple levels if you want. Respecs. You can respec your character by concocting a certain potion. But there's usually a cooldown for this associated with a level. So you need to level up normally to go ahead and use another tonic. But if you tick that, you can pretty much respec as much as you want. Some people do play ARK as if they can't tame dinosaurs. As a bit of a challenge, when you get a bit more experience, you might want to give it a go. The idea would be just to survive and base build and see how you get on. You can also turn off the ability to ride dinosaurs. Maybe you just want them as pets, then you can also tick that and turn them off. Show creative mode. Quick and easy. If you want to do a bit of cheating sometimes, then having that on will give you an option that I'm going to show you in a second. And then allow flyer speed leveling. This caused a whole load of drama years ago. They've only just recently added it back in for consoles, but it means that you can increase the speed of your flying creatures. They turned it off for these. All the other creatures on land you can increase how quickly they run, but flyers you weren't able to. So now when you increase the speed of a dinosaur when you level them up, you will be able to go faster on flying creatures. But only if you have this ticked. So I recommend you probably do it. It's the old school way of playing ARK before they realised it needed a bit more balance. Press RB, you can then access the advanced settings. This is where it gets a bit crazy. But don't worry, I'm here to explain. Again, a lot of this stuff is redundant. Like I said, unless you've got another PlayStation spare and you do want to use it as a server box, you pretty much have to have that PlayStation on all the time, and it's just not worth it. There are many ways that you can get cheap servers, and if you use my links and my codes, you can even get a 10% discount. Head over to Nitrado, and yeah, I promise you though, this is buggy. I ran one for years before we had rentable servers. They would break often, they would go down often. They're just not worth your time for a fun experience. So things like allow PvE timer or allow PvE use system time, this is all about setting up a server so that you can turn PvP off or on at certain times. Likewise, you can prevent tribe alliances, PvE allow tribe war cancel. Basically you can turn it or allow people to declare war on each other. You can turn off the disable PvE gamma, you get the idea. Couple things you might want to make sure you're checked though. As I said, cave building, if you do want to build inside caves, which isn't normally recommended, but there are some caves that won't necessarily be in terms of the vanilla content needed. A lot of the caves you have to go and get artifacts from, and some of the caves you don't. So if you do want to build in some of them, then make sure that's ticked on. And this is an important one as well. A big component of ARK is being able to pick up other creatures. You can pick up creatures with your dinosaurs, and then take them over to pens, drop them in, and tame them nice and easy. So make sure you tick that. Warning though, it does mean that other players will be able to join your world and possibly get a flying dinosaur and pick you up. You can still die by being dropped and being picked up. Extra prevention volumes, the one below it, pretty much stops you from building too close to certain areas that are basically important. I.e. you won't be able to build on locations where resources spawn quite frequently, and it will give even more space around them to stop people from basically cheating or blocking up certain places like cave entrances. On official servers, your base can decay within 7 days. If you don't go and visit it, you don't make sure it's repaired, it'll basically destroy itself and all your goods will be left on the floor for scavengers. You can actually turn this off in single player mode, so you won't ever have to worry just in case you have forgotten to go and visit some sort of outpost somewhere. It will still be there after 7 days. Likewise with dinosaurs, the same deal. You might have left some dinosaur somewhere, totally forgot about it, and then realised you wanted it and it's disappeared. That's because you haven't got this button ticked. Underneath it, you've then got the decay period. Basically, you can change how long it takes for a player to be inactive before their base starts to decay. So you may have seen flash up on screen, it gives you an indication of how much structures would last, and then you get like a grace period basically. If you put it to 0, as soon as that time is up, usually 7 days, then that's it, their base will disappear. If you put it to the right hand side, you'll get more time before your bases will disappear. So it's good if you do have some friends that come and go as they please. It might give them a bit more time if they're going to come back to your world and find that their base has all disappeared, then you need to increase it to the right hand side. But it's just easier to tick the disable structure decay and disable dino decay, which is both the same thing. A lot of these settings will be exactly the same if you do decide to rent a server, so it's worth paying attention to these as well, as again you might need these, especially if you are going to have a proper server running. Then we've got another couple of settings to do with setting PvE start and stop times. Prevent diseases, you can get infected by certain creatures and it will basically end up killing you. You can stop that happening, or more importantly stop you spreading it to other players, which is a thing. You can also tick non-permanent. So if you die, that's it, you will lose the COVID. There are big caves in ARK, especially on some of the modded maps. Some people feel it's cheating, allowing flying creatures to fly inside them, so it's set off by default. But if you do want to use certain creatures in certain caves, you can actually tick it on and be able to fly your pterodactyls into some of the biggest ones. PvP dino decay you can pretty much ignore, it's just to protect creatures while you're actually offline. Unless you're actually using a PlayStation as a server, you won't need it. Basically it means your dinosaurs won't disappear if you have been offline. Again, it's something to do with dedicated servers. Override structure platform prevention. Basically your dinosaurs, the big ones that have big platforms, you can put turrets and spikes and all sorts of things on it. But you need to tick that box if you want to mess around and get a bit creative. Increase PvP respawn interval. For some reason have your world set as PvP and randoms are joining. If you actually tick that, every time they die it'll increase how long it takes for them to be able to respawn. If you do have a lot of people joining, and again some people might be looking to make friends, then tick offline raid protection, and that will stop any other player being able to troll any other player, i.e. destroy their bases when they're offline. So it's definitely worth having if you are going to run a public world. A lot of these settings apply to stuff like that. I'm not going to go through them, but basically you can set the times to raiding, and again, you're just not going to need it. If you really want to know what they do, I have done some guides taking a look at all of these in the past. Like I said, unless you're going to have your own proper server, you just won't need to know. One that you will need is structure prevent resource radius multiplier. When you go and harvest any trees or rocks or whatever, it takes a while for it to spawn, and when you start putting bases down, it'll actually increase the distance where stuff will respawn. If you have this number lower, basically you can have trees spawning in your house. So you don't want it too low. I would say about 300, 200 is probably the limit. It's effectively, I think, translates to like meters or yards. So if you don't want loads of foliage around you, then you can go ahead and increase that number, but it does mean you'll have to go further to go and get fibre, wood or rock. Then we've got the world settings. This is all to do with dinosaurs and laying eggs, hatching their stuff, how much they can gather, even more detailed stuff. I've never been into breeding in ARK. I've never done it legit, maybe like only once, because I just find it a bit boring waiting around for babies. I like adventuring. So I probably will do this in a separate video, a bit more detailed, but I have to go through it just for you guys now. In ARK, when you raise babies or eggs, you basically get a buff when you're imprinting on them. If you're the first person to see their little faces as they hatch, then you should normally get a buff. But you can stop that from happening if you want by ticking this box. If you're playing with your friends, maybe family members, kids, whatever, and you want them to help with the baby raising, then you might make sure that you've got this box ticked. It means everyone can take care of the baby, not just cuddles but other stuff as well. Then one of ARK's most famous settings, how much you want to poop. Don't put this up too high, not unless for some reason you really want a whole bunch of fertilizer. I wouldn't also put it to the lowest point because you do need a little bit of shit now and then. I'd probably just about keep it as it is. It's annoying when you hear the sound of plopping every 2 seconds. Now we've got something that you need a degree in, honestly. Laying baby eggs and dinosaurs, people spend their lives getting this right. If you look it up on Reddit and places, you can probably find some perfect settings, but I'm just going to give you the simple version. Lay egg interval, you can pretty much have your dinosaurs absolutely popping out eggs every 2 seconds. If you have it all the way to 0.01, if they're mating, they'll produce as many eggs as they can. If you put that number higher, it's going to take longer. Likewise, the mating interval, egg hatch speed is a bit different. If you actually increase the number to the right, it just means that the eggs are going to hatch quicker. Now you might think that's a great thing to have, but be warned, if you're not around to imprint on the dinosaurs once they've hatched, they can actually die of starvation. So you'd never want this too high. Also, if you accidentally leave this up way too high, it can actually crash your game and make it unplayable because there'll be so many creatures spawning and hatching. I would say most people have these kind of settings. I would probably say about halfway between 0.5 and 1, and maybe if you're really into the breeding aspects of the game, you might reduce it all the way. The egg hatch speed, I would say yeah, anyone can have that up to maybe like 10 sometimes. It just means you don't have to wait around for hours. It can take absolute ages, even a full week to raise baby dinosaurs. I'm sure there might even be a dinosaur that takes 2 weeks. Obviously on official settings you've got tribe mates, that's the idea. Same thing for baby mature. If you want dinosaurs to grow up quickly, then again you put it all the way to the right hand side, and again people have that usually around 10 if they want it decent, although it still might be a bit too quick for you. Baby food consumption speed's a bit different. You want it a bit to the left if you want them to eat their food quicker, and if you want to take it a bit longer you need to put it to the right hand side. Now we're talking about resources. Harvest health. This is pretty similar to one of the ones I mentioned earlier. Whereas the first one was about gathering resources quicker, this one's all about exactly how many strikes it takes. So if you have it all the way to like 0, it'll only take 1 hit and you'll be able to literally harvest whatever you want. Some people prefer playing the game by going to the same rock, same tree and hitting it over and over again to get lots of resources. And especially if you don't want your world to look like a bit of a wasteland, you might want to consider putting that a bit higher. Me personally, I've always enjoyed just clearing everything out, giving me space. I've never really worried too much as I always have the regrow pretty short. Speaking of regrow, part of the one I showed you earlier was the distance that stuff will grow near your base. Well, this one is the speed. Lower numbers means that it will spawn almost instantly after you've harvested. Well, maybe up to like a minute. If you go ahead and put it to the right, it may take a lot longer for items to spawn. Then we've got a whole bunch of baby raising stuff. Babies need cuddles. You get special buffs on them, and you can get their basic stats to improve over time. Hardcore players like to have this number a pretty decent amount, so it means they can get lots of cuddles in. That in turn increases the imprinting quality, and that means you get better babies. I would leave these well alone until you've gone and researched more thoroughly and you've got more experience playing the game. Not like going to be breeding a million babies in the first few days of playing ARK anyway, so yeah, I might even come back with a separate video for these. But if you do get it wrong, you can end up with creatures basically dying or not getting any buffs at all, or being so OP that it's not really much point in playing the game. After that, we've got day and night speeds. If you want the time to be slower between day and night occurring, then you actually decrease it. And if you want it to cycle through day and night quicker, then you put it to the right hand side. Normally 0.5 is good enough. Daytime speed, put it to the left and you'll have more time to explore during the day. Nighttime speed, put it to the right and the nighttime will go quicker, and that's usually preferable. Most players don't want to play in the dark. I know, and I personally usually put that around 5. Sometimes if you drop items or bodies or backpacks, they can actually spoil and decay. So for spoiling time, you actually need to put the number higher to give it more time before it spoils. If you put it to 0, it will basically spoil a lot quicker. You can then modify that separately. So items, i.e. tools, weapons, stuff like that. Corpse, sometimes you want to get back to your corpse because it's got stuff on it. So you don't really want these as low numbers, but you don't want them too high because you need a lot of spoiled meat to make narcotics, one of the most important things in ARK. Another one to do with resources growing is the radius around you and structures. This is pretty much similar to the first one that I mentioned earlier, but you can just have a bit more control over it. You can also control how much of these items will respawn close to a player or not. So again, you might want to have it a bit lower than 1. You can farm in ARK Survival Evolved, and if you want your crops to grow quickly, pull it to the right hand side. If you put it all the way to the left, they just won't grow. Or very, very slowly. I normally have that like a good 6. Your crops can actually decay if you're not harvesting them quick enough. So if you want to stop that happening, you can put that to a higher number too. We then move on to the dino stats. Now these can be a bit complicated. I wouldn't mess around with them too much. Effectively, you've got the wild dino stats. You can increase pretty much every wild creature to have a boosted stat. Maybe you want to make some of the dinosaurs a bit more tanky, then you can go ahead and increase the health and it will be obviously harder to kill them. And that will affect all wild dinosaurs in the world. Likewise, tamed dino stats per level. When you tame a dinosaur, this basically gives it a boost in its stats. So you can increase these and it will get a massive boost. Good one to test it out on is weight. Tame a regular dinosaur, maybe a raptor, see how much weight it's got, maybe 400 or 500, and then go ahead and change this setting to something like maybe 3.0. Then go ahead and tame a new raptor and you should get 3 times the amount of weight. It's only applied on that first time when you tame a creature, and it's all relative to what level the dinosaur is. Tamed dino add per level. This is how much you will give your dinosaur when choosing what to level up. Every time you level up your dinosaur, you can then put a point into health, stamina, torpidity, oxygen, food, water, temp, weight, damage, speed, or temp fortitude. And usually does it in sort of times amounts. So if you want its dinosaur not to run out of stamina, then you could increase that every time you put a point up in your dinosaurs. Instead of only getting maybe 10 points, you put it as 2.0, they'll get 20. Again, be careful. If you mess around with these, you can ruin the experience, make the game just a bit too easy. Most of these work on the basis of tens or multiples. So as I said, if you do it by 1.0, that's effectively 10 points, 2.0, 20 points, 3.0, 30 points. There are a few anomalies. Speed can be a bit odd. Sometimes it only increases it a small amount because the game doesn't want you running around with supersonic dinosaurs. The Tame Dino Stats Affinity, that's a bit of a combination. Effectively, if you manage to use the correct foods, you're taming the creature in the right way and using its preferred foods and stuff, you can get massive bonuses. Players on official servers will go to extreme lengths to make sure they've got the right kind of kibble, which is a food item made out of dinosaur eggs mostly, to give to the right dinosaur, as this improves its overall stats. So once you get into breeding, you'll probably love getting the best you can. If you want to cheat and give yourself some bonuses, then you can go ahead and increase any of these stats. Then we've got player. Just like the dinosaurs, you can mess around with your stats. It's a bit more simple with the player stats. Every point that you get, once it goes up a level, gaining experience, you can then increase it by 10 points. Again, the only difference is the speed, which I think only increases by like 2. So again, be careful, don't put these up too high. Otherwise you'll notice that you've got like 4,000 health because you accidentally put it as 4 times the amount. That would mean every time you level up your health, you get 40 health instead of only 10, which is the vanilla option. I would say some of these it's okay to mess with. A little bit of oxygen, maybe increase that to 2.0. Your weight for sure on single player, although you are meant to use the dinosaurs to carry all your stuff. Back in the day, I've had servers where I've had this up to 30. So basically players could carry everything they want. And if that sounds like a bit of you, then you can go ahead and just put this up to a stupid number and you won't ever have to worry about being over encumbered, although you will run out of inventory space eventually. I would say a good one is 20 points, so put that to 2.0 and you gain 20 points every time you put something in weight. Then you've got the experience multipliers, so you can have generic gained a lot more, and this is on top of the XP multiplier that we've already looked at. Again, if you put these up too high, you can make the game just a bit too easy. I would probably put them at only maybe 1.5, get used to how things work, and then come back and revisit if you want to tinker around a little bit. Special XP is normally to do with killing, I do believe, alphas and bosses. You'll get a ton more XP for doing that sort of stuff. And it's actually the one thing that I normally always adjust. I feel like I should get a big reward for killing lots of special creatures. So I always usually put that as like 2.0. Then you've got things like how many players in a tribe you can have, how much players can actually earn experience. You can set it that players won't be able to proceed past a certain point. You can look up stat tables that will tell you exactly how much experience is needed to level up to a certain level. So you might want a bit more primitive lifestyle, then you can do that just by looking it up. Same thing goes for dino max experience points. You can stop the levels they get at certain points, so you can only increase it by 10 levels or 20 levels. After that, we've got some more to do with just platforms and stuff. Flyer platform unaligned basing you won't necessarily need, but if you tick this, you can actually transfer your players or your other dinosaurs on big massive dinosaur platforms as they fly through the sky. Some people feel it's a bit too unrealistic, so they turn it off, but otherwise put it on and your dinosaur should technically stay on the platform whatever dinosaur it is you're moving around. You can turn on the spikes to do damage against riderless dinosaurs. I wouldn't advise this. You never know if you accidentally jump off a dinosaur and it got a bit too close to some spikes, and before long you didn't notice and it's died. You can actually choose what types of engrams you want. Now this can be a bit buggy and I'm going to show you how in a second, but tick that on and then we'll go over to this page on the RB on the side there. You see it, engrams, in 2 seconds once we explain the rest. If you want to see damage numbers, how much you're doing, tick that on. Custom recipes allow you to make foods out of pretty much lots of resources and they'll give you buffs no matter what. If you want to follow the exact recipes though, tick that off. There are special dinosaurs considered raid dinosaurs, or basically the titanosaur. If you want to keep them on your server, once you've actually tamed it, you need to make sure this box is ticked. If you don't, it eventually will starve and then it will die. You can mess around with how quick or slow it'll eat its food. You don't really want it to be eaten lots quickly, so put it down to the left hand side. The recipes for actually making stuff, as I said, you can increase or boost it, so putting it to the right means you'll get more buffs from the stuff that you make, using lots of the crop plots, foods and veggies and stuff. Lots of the foods you can get give you buffs as well against cold or extra oxygen, and so it effectively just give you longer. Custom recipe skill factor is to do with your crafting skill. Basically, if you put that to the right, again you'll get more out of the foods that you're crafting. Crafting skill bonus multiplier is pretty much the same thing, but instead it's tied more to your actual character level in crafting. If that's high, then you'll get more out of it. After that, we've got supply crate loot quality. If you want super OP loot from lots of the drops, then go ahead and put that to something like 10. Likewise fishing. Then after that, you've got fuel consumption. If you want your fuel to last a bit longer, then put that a little bit lower. It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure if you have that at something lower, it means you don't need to worry as much about fuel. Remember, I've talked about platform building where you can increase actually how much you put on it. There's loads of videos out there of great builders building huge castles. For that you are going to need to increase it quite a bit. Sometimes you might need to go up as high as 10. Active event. There are a bunch of events all throughout the year that Wildcard put on. They normally put these in patch notes and stuff and let everyone know. And so you can activate them, which means that you'll have dinosaurs with certain colours. And you can even turn on Christmas events where certain creatures will fly across the sky dropping off presents. You need to put the correct name in, and again you can look that up on any wiki. And that's almost it. Just to look at the engrams, we can actually tick on or off any of the engrams that you don't want. I personally am not a big fan of the super technological age. You don't get there until you've pretty much taken on all the bosses. But things like tech, saddles, stuff like this, I don't really like a lot of it. So basically you can turn on and off whatever you want. And there we go, that is the settings fully explained for 2022. If you feel I've got anything wrong, let me know in the comment section. How do you know you're brand new to the game? Go and check out the rest of my guides and look out for fresh ones taking a look at actually how to play the game as well. Until next time, ratbags, I'll catch you later. Cool, blimey, I ain't done one of them in ages. If you need any more help, go and watch some of the other videos I've done. Otherwise, I will probably look at these in more detail with special little videos and showing some actual gameplay and the changes that happen when you adjust some of them. If you've got any questions, leave it in the comment section. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible, but make sure you watch the whole video. As I said, I've covered ARK for 6.5 years. I've not really done as much content lately, but I've got hundreds and hundreds of guides, tutorials that will all work perfectly fine, showcases and more. So go and check them out. I'll see you ratbags later.